Hi, my name is Sarah Wilson, and I'm a contributing photographer for Texas Monthly. For the August 2007 issue, I did a photo essay titled Faces of Forgiveness. This is a collection of portraits of the participants in Bridges to Life, a prison ministry currently operating in over 20 Texas prisons. This was a self-assignment that I brought to the magazine, and I'm honored that senior editor Pam Koloff was eager to join me in this project to conduct the interviews. I met John Sage, the founder of Bridges to Life, over a year ago at a lecture in Houston featuring Sister Helen Prejean, the nun who authored the book Dead Man Walking. Little did I know that my mother's family and the Sages were close friends. They lived in the same neighborhood in Houston, and the kids attended the same schools over the years. John Sage started Bridges to Life after his sister Marilyn was brutally stabbed to death by two 19-year-olds who were attempting to steal her car. Marilyn's killers were arrested within 48 hours and were sentenced to death at the trial a year later. In spite of the fact that his sister's killers were on death row, John found it extremely difficult to resolve his feelings of anger and grief. He chose to dedicate himself to preventing future crimes by influencing the behavior of incarcerated pre-release inmates. And it was his feeling that people who have been victims of crime would be best positioned to help offenders. By attending 14 face-to-face once-a-week sessions inside the prison, both victims of crime and offenders participate in a restorative justice process. Inmates come to understand the impact of crime on families of victims and offenders, and crime victims are empowered by telling their stories of victimization. So many of these offenders are also victims of crimes and abuse, and for many of them it is the first time they have ever had a chance to talk openly about their past and their feelings to an audience that is supportive and loving. This open environment fosters both empathy and forgiveness, and I believe that these are the most important aspects of the program. When offenders are released back into society, they will carry with them the stories and the faces of the victim volunteers, and will perhaps avoid committing future crimes knowing that their actions can devastate others. I've worked on this project for 9 months, on and off. I've shot at 3 prisons and traveled to several cities to photograph victim volunteers. At first I went back and forth on how to go about shooting this project. I finally decided to shoot very uniformly on a white backdrop and not to include the surrounding environments. The rooms where the meetings are held are usually pretty institutional, and not in a good way. Plus I wanted both the victim volunteers and the offenders to appear to be in the same open, clean space, just like in the meetings, which is the time when the rest of the prison life is left behind. I also felt that the most important part of the images were the subtle facial expressions, which become highlighted against the plain backdrop. One victim volunteer that I really enjoyed meeting was Annie Stewart from Beaumont. She had been abused for her entire childhood and into her teenage years. At 13, she was drugged and kidnapped by a group of pimps who held her captive in an attic and sold her out to older men. She had said that telling her story of victimization to a group of inmates was the first time she ever felt that someone was listening, and the first time that anyone said, "I'm sorry for what you've been through." Annie now suffers from claustrophobia, and being in enclosed spaces reminds her of that attic and the years of abuse. After the shoot, she let me know that she had been uncomfortable being surrounded by the lights and reflectors, but she wanted to get through it, and she wanted to be part of the story. I have such admiration for Annie and the other victim volunteers. In doing this project, I have been taken aback by these stories of resilience. I don't know if I could get out of bed in the morning if I had gone through the same thing that Annie had experienced. And she goes to prisons every week and tells her story to a group of male inmates who could have been responsible for a similar crime. I think that takes an amazing amount of courage.